Welcome. My name is Peter Stone. I'm currently the chair of the Department of Computer Science. And in that role, I'm not supposed to play favorites, but welcome to the symposium that is a collaboration between my three favorite cross-departmental organizations on campus. As we know, right now we're in a moment where machine learning, artificial intelligence, especially generative artificial intelligence, is changing the world in many ways. The Machine Learning Lab is the group on campus that focuses on that, led by faculty from departments in two colleges, the ECE department, Electrical and Computer Engineering, and the Computer Science department. That includes faculty also from statistics and math and business and many other departments. And generative AI is really a huge focus right now. And it's gotten to the point, even though it started with sort of the ability to do fantastic things in computer vision, and then really sprung onto the world stage with the chatbots that were trained on predicting text and turned into some really phenomenal programs that we all know about now, and have now gotten to a point where they're becoming a core aspect of artificial intelligence that interacts with the physical world, what some people call embodied artificial intelligence, or has traditionally been called intelligent robotics. And that's the focus of Texas Robotics, which is also a cross-departmental, cross-college organization, includes faculty from core faculty from computer science, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and aerospace engineering, and affiliated faculty more broadly than that as well. And we're at the point now where just in the last week or so, and this will be a topic of the upcoming panel, there's been a dispute about, and indications that the federal government is convinced that our generative artificial intelligence can have a big enough impact on the physical world that they've sent signals that it ought to be used potentially for surveillance of citizens and for autonomous lethal weapons. And there's a dispute between some of the big companies about whether that should be permitted or not. And that brings us to the third cross-departmental organization that's even broader than Machine Learning Lab and Texas Robotics, but is Good Systems, our ethical AI initiative that is focused on thinking about not just what can we do with modern artificial intelligence methods, with embodied artificial intelligence, but what should we do, and what will be the impacts on society, and how should we interact with this responsibly from both as creators of the technology, as policymakers, what kind of stance should we be giving to the outside world. So this is the first time these three organizations have come together to give the same symposium, a joint symposium, but I think especially in this moment, it's very fitting to have machine learning, robotics, and Good Systems, ethical AI, all together in this room. It's fantastic to see so many people here. We have a really exciting 2 days planned, highlighted by three really fantastic keynote speakers, one from each of the disciplines, starting with Greg Hager. Right after our panel that's coming up, we'll be talking on representing robotics. Alice Zhang later this afternoon will be representing Good Systems, and tomorrow Killian Weinberger will be representing Machine Learning Lab. We also have some talks and presentations by some of our industry sponsors that have been very valuable partners to all of the organizations, and also by some of our faculty and students at poster sessions. And not to miss, at the end of tomorrow, there's some tours of our state-of-the-art robotics facility in Anahist Gymnasium, just about a 15-minute walk this way, which you can't miss, especially for the representatives from the city of Austin in this room. I've always said, as we were designing that building, that we wanted it to be one of the landmark attractions that would show up on the City of Austin tourism pages, and I think we've gotten to that point. If you haven't seen the building and the facilities, the space we have there, it's absolutely phenomenal, and everybody should make a point of seeing that as a part of the tour at the end of the day. So that's all I had to say as opening remarks, and since I'm also moderating the panel. I'm going to yield the rest of my time to myself and to the three people who are about to join me on stage. The directors of those three organizations, José Millán, Adam Klivans, Ken Fleischmann. So let's come on up. And so before we get to the sort of meaty topic that I just foreshadowed about the disputes and about what should be the uses of generative AI, let me just give you each a moment to introduce yourselves and maybe say a word or two about what are some of the most sort of salient and pressing issues in machine learning, robotics, and ethical AI, maybe starting with you, Adam.
I'm Adam Klivans. I'm a professor of computer science and director of the Machine Learning Lab. I'm also the director of IFML, which is our NSF AI Institute for the Foundations of Machine Learning Lab. And I work closely with Sanjay Shakatai at the Center for Generative AI. One of the most exciting things to me right now is sort of the role of open source AI. We're big believers in doing everything open source. If you look right now at the top open weight, which is not open source, if you look at the top open weight models on all of the benchmarks, the top models are all Chinese trained models. And then you have the closed models from, say, OpenAI and Anthropic. And I'm a big believer in coming up with totally open source models and showing that kind of the role that universities can play in making that happen.
Thanks, and maybe it's worth mentioning that you and Sanjay have helped collect a fantastic compute cluster. Maybe say a word or two about what some of the specs of that are and how it relates to other places.
Well, we work with TAC. We're super fortunate to have TAC. It's one of the few places in the country that can stand up one of these computer clusters. But we do have the largest GPU compute cluster in academia. We have 600 GH200s and several more that are going to be that have arrived and are being installed as we speak. So we'll be up over 1,000 pretty soon, I think. And also TAC has launched Horizon, which is going to be 4,000 GPUs. That's an NSF resource for everybody in the country. And that really allows us to do kind of these open source projects and build and, once we get up to this type of scale, we'll be able to sort of train, close to frontier size models and try out a lot of ideas to find out, sort of what's really going on at these, closed source companies.
Great, thanks, Adam. And Jose, as I mentioned, so everybody knows generative AI is really at the center of everybody's attention right now, and it's changing the world in many ways. There's now getting to the point where it's the embodied side of this and the interactions with the physical world are really becoming impacted. Can you say something about Texas Robotics and also start by introducing yourself?
So my name is José Millán.
You need to turn it on, I think.
No. Hello? Yeah. No, not yet. No, now. My name is José Millán. I am a professor in electrical and computer engineering and also in neurology. My work is on brain-controlled robots, and there is a direct connection with health. So I am fortunate and privileged to be the new director of Texas Robotics after our founding director, Peter Stone. And I am privileged because I can say that we are covering almost every domain in robotics, from autonomy, self-delivering robots, to service robots, to health robotics, medical robotics, surgery robotics, and you name it. But the most impressive thing, I believe, as it is the case for the Machine Learning Lab, is that we are top researchers in each domain, but what stands out is the emerging subdisciplines because of our collaborative enterprise. And this is unique here at UT. And I have been in several institutions, and I can testify that this is unique. Something that I am very excited about is that here at UT, we have the unique possibility to build a new university hospital. And this hospital has a vision of being the future hospital. The hospital that in 50 years from now will still be at the frontier of what a hospital has to be. And we have then the possibility to start thinking and implementing how artificial intelligence, how robotics will be integrated in that future hospital. So I hope that you will join us along this path.
Great, thank you, Jose. And yes, I think one of the most salient potential benefits of artificial intelligence is healthcare, and that the hospital is a super exciting direction. Ken, maybe use that as a launching point as you introduce yourself and talk about mission of good systems. What are some of the concerns also, and what are the things that you think are most salient today?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So, Ken Fleischmann, interim dean at the School of Information, and I've been focusing on ethics of AI since the previous millennium. So it's a long-term project for me. And we're seeing some really fascinating challenges. In good systems, we're doing a lot of work on, I guess, the future of work. So thinking about what work in the future, and that's work in the medical domain, that's work in a lot of different knowledge work, but it's also skilled trade work as well. And of course, automation has transformed workplaces for decades, for centuries, but we're seeing an acceleration of those trends. So we're seeing changes in entry-level job opportunities, actually more so in the UK than in the US currently. And there are more job securities in the UK than there are in the US, so that might be a canary in the coal mine. So I think there are real reasons to be very attentive to what's going on in terms of the workforce of tomorrow and the role that people play in that relative to AI. And then, of course, it's hard to avoid the topic today of the future of warfare, and the warfare of today seeming in many ways like the warfare of tomorrow. I mean, the way that AI is being used, and the way AI is being used in so many ways in this country and globally in terms of surveillance and targeting. I found the idea of suicide drones really fascinating because the whole point of a drone is there's not a person in it, so it's quite an anthropomorphization. We don't talk about suicide missiles, for example. They pretty much do the same thing. Yeah, I mean, definitely it's a fascinating time to be alive, and there's never been a more important time to question, as Peter was noting, what should we do? So I think that's a really important thing for us to think about throughout this entire symposium. Thanks.
Great. So, it's fantastic having the three of you leaders of these synergistic and also complementary organizations. We have a short time on this panel, and I don't want to cut into our, next will be our first invited speaker. So I'm just going to rip off the Band-Aid, and we're going to make this as, and we're going to talk about the spicy topic, which is exactly this dispute that's now between the federal government and Anthropic, and then also the response of OpenAI. And for those, probably most of you are aware of it, but the short summary is that the federal government has asked that they could have free and unfettered use of Claude and the Anthropic technology, and Anthropic has insisted on putting in conditions that it not be used for surveillance of U.S. citizens, and also not for autonomous lethal weapons without humans in the loop. And in response, the federal government has banned use of Claude in any federal contracts. And then OpenAI now has stepped in and filled this. Given the short time we have, and maybe there'll even be some time for a question or reaction or two, let's start on this end. And I'd like to hear your comments with respect to how it relates to ethical AI, clearly embodied AI, because these all are uses of generative AI in the physical world that they're talking about, and generative AI in particular. What is what's worrisome about this moment? What's significant about this moment from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So I think we have to think about ethical decision making in a systems perspective. So there are all of these different actors making these different decisions that are each interconnected. And an approach that I have been using in my AI ethics classes is I'll get students to be involved in multi-stakeholder cases, where one stakeholder will make a decision, that will then impact the next decision maker, which will impact the next decision maker. So we have to be thinking about these complex effects of one stakeholder group. This company does this government does this. What are the repercussions? What are the implications? I think the most important thing is to be very proactive about the technologies that are being put out in the world. And this is really, I think a lot of people are saying, this is really computer science's Oppenheimer moment of realizing the impact that these technologies have and the life or death consequences of these systems. So waiting until we think about that maybe this technology would be used for a certain purpose, I think it's really important that we think proactively about what are the different ways this technology could be applied. Are there any ways that we could design the technology in ways that promote the positive use but would make it more challenging to get the more negative use, because relying on our sort of governmental norms may not always work.
Thanks, Ken. Jose, what's the significance from a robotics perspective?
Well, I think larger than robotics, because I am thinking that a fundamental issue is data protection. And data protection does not only mean your private data, it is data from critical institutions like companies. Can you trust any open or closed system that is on which you are relying for your business, that is using your data and sharing your data with whom knows who? What about health institutions, where we will be dealing with health data from people? Will this data be shared with insurances? Which are the consequences? I work in the domain of brain signals. Are we sharing our most private, inner kind of identity openly without any control? And in terms of robots, how those robots will then serve you if there is someone above you who says that, no, you are the little piece, the little soldier that I will be sacrificing for higher interests. And when it comes to physical interaction, you may realize that this may have strong and heavy consequences if you are the soldier to be sacrificed. So.
Okay. And Adam, what about from the machine learning perspective? What's the significance of this moment?
Well, as the director of, IFML, Institute for Foundations of Machine Learning, I think these issues highlight the importance of foundational algorithmic questions that we don't understand. Why is a network making a particular decision? How do we interpret that decision? What is it basing this decision on? And maybe even a little under the radar sort of distribution shift. We're typically in our field, from a foundational perspective, always assuming that your training distribution looks like your test distribution. But if you've trained something, especially for warfare in a very controlled setting, how do you know how it's going to behave in some setting that you haven't seen before? I think that issue is what's preventing a lot of AI tools also from being deployed in the healthcare setting. You're training a model on some particular population of patients, and then you have to sort of go and deploy it on some other population of patients, but we have no real meaningful way of understanding how those populations have changed or shifted. So as someone who does sort of algorithms and tries to understand sort of the mathematics of AI, I think it really does highlight the importance of these fundamental questions.
So may I add?
Yeah.
I think that you have raised an important issue. We are thinking about AI, machine learning as totally autonomous, independent creatures of our invention. Whereas there are cases where you need to have human in the loop, where these entities will be only one input, maybe critical, but one input among many others for humans to decide. And we cannot forget that we humans have to be, at the end of the day, those who take responsibilities for whatever our technology is doing on our behalf.
So, Ken has referenced, suicide drones, Jose, the privacy and human interaction, Adam, you talk about fundamental foundations of machine learning in that kind of context, with referencing an Oppenheimer moment. How is this shaping what you and we in the field are thinking about what problems we should understand, and which ones might be opening a Pandora's box, or one, and how does that shape the problems that are being focused on in the generative AI community? Yeah, I'm talking from the foundation's perspective, like what the responsibility.
Well, my vision is that UT should be and sort of is the biggest and best open research lab for AI in academia. So the fact that we have this GPU compute cluster, and that we can work with TAC, Texas Advanced Computing Center, kind of gives us the opportunity to attract scholars from. I mean, you mentioned kind of an Oppenheimer. I think of sort of an all-star team of academics. I mean, it enables us to attract academics and researchers from all across the country and sort of try out interesting AI ideas at a smaller scale, and the ones that seem most promising, we can sort of unleash our computational resources on. And I think by having a really open research lab, that enables us to really look into these questions in a way that others can't, and kind of come up with answers that we can actually talk about and publicize.
Okay. I have so the allotted time for this panel is about 6 more minutes, and I have a list of about 8 more questions that I could be asking you. But I want to make sure, what's a panel without some audience interaction? So there's been a lot said in a short time so far. If anybody has any, reactions or questions for the panel, please, please raise your hand. Yeah.
Have any of y'all thought through that moment when you are going to put your career on the line and have to abandon it, or make this fatal decision to accept the consequences?
I think probably the answer is uniformly no. That hasn't happened. The question is so far. The question is is there under what maybe another way of asking that is, under what circumstances, or are there any circumstances? And this is sort of what I was getting at in my last question, Adam, a little bit. Are there any circumstances when it might you might decide that it's too dangerous to keep going forwards, with this. That's some of the news. That's some of the the questions people are asking. Or is it universally the case that knowledge is going knowledge for knowledge's sake is universally good, and we should pursue it at no matter what, and see and then worry about the the policy and structures afterwards. I think this is a question for any of you.
Yeah, I think good question. Thanks. It's vitally important that we continue to ask these questions and think deeply about these issues. Honestly, this is part of why I went into academia as opposed to other routes, because I think here our focus is asking these questions and trying to build new knowledge. I think it's a very different space in both industry and government these days, and I think those are where they're definitely. That question of, if I don't do this, would someone else do that, is something a lot of people have to be thinking about right now. And it's difficult choices. I'd say, not being in that role and not having pursued that direction in my career, it's hard to speak to that in any kind of realistic terms. But definitely, in terms of reading brainwaves, as Jose was saying, it'd be interesting to understand the thought process that's going on in a lot of these cases and how people are grappling with these ethical decisions they're faced with.
Well, for me, there is critical points, and those points are arriving. For example, if we have intelligent machines, if in addition those machines are understanding so for you to realize, we believe that every decision that we are taking is a conscious decision. And it is, if we really are the agents of our thought processes. But those decisions are highly biased by a huge amount. If you count in terms of bits, there are many more bits that are processed by our body and our brain that are at the unconscious level than those that reach the conscious level. So if we have machines, agents, physical robots, that are using that unconscious source of data, they can manipulate us. We can start delegating more and more on those machines and intelligent agents, so that at the end of the day, we will be losing our agency. And this is serious. Someone will do it if we don't do it, perhaps, but we have the obligation to raise alarms and to say, this is a way that we don't want to move along.
Adam, anything you want to add?
I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I'm around all of these exciting students and colleagues. You know, we're doing all these things in the biologics and health space. We're working with teams at MD Anderson. We're working on new vaccines and therapeutics. I work with like incredibly brilliant students and postdocs and clinicians and colleagues, and so I'm just very positive and excited about what we're doing here. And I'm fortunate to be able to do it in an environment that sort of celebrates interesting ideas and publishing open science. And I think you'll see a lot of that at the poster session. So yeah, I'm just excited for this event, and I don't feel like I need to quit.
I mean, maybe I'll respond, and then I'll take maybe one more question before we end. But I'll respond as well. I mean, I think we do need to take seriously the potential misuses of AI technology, just like any other technology. I mean, there's been many negative uses of technology, and also side effects, unintended consequences. There's 40,000 fatal accidents on the roads, more than 40,000 now in the U.S. alone, due to the technology of automobiles. Airplanes have been used as weapons in very famous ways, and yet we accept them because the benefits, we as a society have decided the benefits are outweighing the costs. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I didn't feel the same way about artificial intelligence for many of the same reasons that Adam expressed. I think there's immense positive potential that can be unleashed in healthcare and in other domains, and I would rather that we be the ones making these discoveries in an environment where we're also thinking about the ethical implications, where we're working with colleagues who have experience with other technologies and are thinking from a humanities and social science perspective, than somebody else make those discoveries and just unleash them on the world. I think we have the opportunity to choose what technology we build, and also try to shape it in a way that the positives will outweigh the negatives. And I'm optimistic that that's possible. I saw a hand back here somewhere. Please.
So with all that in mind, just kind of crossing back to a previous statement, I'm a big fan of open source, but that kind of lets the genie out of the box in terms of safeguards and everything else that you may choose to put in as ethical academics or as ethical industry people. Suddenly all of those become easily overridable. How do you propose, we go forward with open source models, open science, but then be able to then respect those ethical boundaries and export control laws?
For those who didn't hear the beginning of the question, Adam, I'll let you answer this first. The question was about open source. Are you concerned about letting the genie out of the bottle and losing control of the technology through open source initiatives?
Well, maybe one useful analogy is cryptography. That is studied, and cryptographic techniques are studied and published in all sorts of venues, and people have worked together, with academics across a wide variety of disciplines to discuss its implications, but still come up with new interesting protocols and techniques. And I think that's worked out pretty well. So I'm hopeful that we can do something similar here.
Jose or Ken, anything you want to add about open source?
I don't think that I can add more than what has been said. I am not expert in open source. So.
I do think it's important we're able to scrutinize the systems that are being designed and used in so many applications, including in elections, right? So there's an election going on here. And so if we're choosing between a voting machine that's a proprietary system that we have no way of scrutinizing exactly what's going on, versus one that we can actually scrutinize the code and verify that it's working as operated. That could help us to avoid a lot of controversies, and I think that's an effective application across many different things. So I think the ability to scrutinize code and be able to understand how it functions is a really important goal for us to strive toward.
I think it's also useful to think in terms of technology readiness levels. So, like, from in the sort of military complex, there's talks about general purpose technology at low technology readiness levels that have broad implications both in sort of military and in general society, and the sort of tradition has been for those technologies to be broadly disseminated because of the sort of possible uses that they can be put to in many different ways. As you get to the higher technology readiness levels, that's when there starts to be export controls and more concerns. My view is that the fundamental foundational generative AI technologies are at they're sort of at that low technology readiness level. They're not embedded yet within an application that is directly used for a specific negative purpose, and also have these sort of broad potential positive uses as well. And the fact is, if we don't have access to open source, there's nothing for us to study and to control and to learn how to control within the academic world. We don't have access to the models that are behind the company sort of firewalls, and also then don't have visibility and opportunity to influence how they're going to be used. And so having open source general purpose models, I think, is unambiguously essential. And then as you start building applications that embed them, is the time to start thinking about the sort of controls and export issues. So I think with that, I've already gone a couple minutes past. We actually have only been sitting in these seats for a couple of minutes, and I don't want to, I'm going to encourage you not to go away because we have our first keynote speaker starting in 5 minutes. So I encourage, but what I do hope is that the topics that we've brought up here and only really scratched the surface on will serve as ongoing fodder for conversations amongst you, with us, at the poster sessions in the hallways for the next 2 days. And this sets the tone for what we're going to be doing here, bringing together machine learning, robotics, ethical AI, represented by good systems. So what I'd encourage you to do now is just stand up, stretch your legs, but don't go anywhere, because and talk with your neighbors about these issues, because in 5 minutes we'll be starting with Greg Hager's keynote speech. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.